I get asked a lot about what iPads or non-iPad drawing tablets I would recommend for someone starting out, or someone who's looking to move towards digital illustration, or maybe someone who just wants a portable system if they're working on like a Cintiq or something like that. And I've always leaned heavily towards iPads, but I know that the cost can seem prohibitive, especially if you're looking at one of the pros. After individually responding to these questions countless times, I realized, hey, I have 4 iPads in my house that I have access to that cover a wide spectrum of models and power and affordability. And I thought, well, why don't I do a video comparing these specifically in regard to using them as a tool for illustration, as a drawing device. There's plenty of videos out there about iPads that talk about, I don't know, whatever other people use them for. Games, movies, media device, performance, beasts. I'm just gonna talk about it in terms of drawing. I use my iPad Pro for 95% of my work as a professional illustrator, and I don't think I'm using all the power that's in there. This thing is very powerful. It's got an M4 chip. The M1 chip was a beast, still is a beast. So my hope is that in this video, I'll be able to figure out what the limitations are, how these all work for drawing stuff, and maybe you'll be able to figure out how much iPad you actually need. I'll also talk about these Apple Pencils too. My new iPad Pro M4 has the Apple Pencil Pro, but then I have the regular Apple Pencils for these other devices. So I'll talk about those too, let you know if I think you really need the Apple Pencil Pro. I'll let you know any other things I discover along the way while testing these. All right, let's quickly discuss the contenders for this iPad Battle Royale. First up is my trusty iPad Pro 13-inch M4. This is the current model. This one is maxed out because I really wanted the nano texture, which on a side note, still loving, still holding up. Been using this all day, every day for a long time now, and no scratches or anything like that. It's looking good. This thing, just looking at some stats over here, is almost twice as fast as the next competitor on this lineup, and almost 3 times faster than these other 2 that I'll talk about. The next contender is this iPad Air. This is the 5th generation, so not the current one, last generation. This one is packing an M1 chip, and it belongs to my partner Shayna. She's also an illustrator and draws on this thing all the time and does wonderful drawings with it. So it's clearly not holding her back. Screen size, it's a little bit smaller, but we'll get to that later. Next up is a little guy, a little baby here. Look at this little thing. This is my iPad mini, my pocket sketchbook. It's the size of a moleskin sketchbook. Fits in my hand, can stick it in my pocket. It's pretty delightful. This one is the 6th generation iPad mini, and it's a bit slower than these other things, but I'll give you a little secret. I draw on this thing all the time and it's fine. It's just a little baby. It's just a little guy. And then the last one is a little bit of a wild card. This is an 11-inch iPad Pro, but it's an oldie. This one is from 2018, which doesn't seem like that long ago, but then I realized it is 2024, at least I think. So that's 6 years old. Anyway, based on speed tests, Geekbench, if you will. This one clocked in at 4,700, whereas my little baby iPad mini did a 4,800. So these are very close in terms of performance. The Air is a 7,300 for perspective. So we're like, okay, that's similar in numbers that mean nothing to us right now. And then this one, this chonker, this monster, has a Geekbench score of almost 13,000. So it is just blowing these out of the water. Put this all in perspective, the current iPhone is faster than these 2 iPads, the old iPad Pro 11-inch and the iPad mini, and it's like the same as this M1 iPad Air. That's bonkers. This little guy right here, packing heat. But what does that really mean for illustration? Does it matter for just regular drawing? What about when you introduce animation? Those are the kind of things that we're gonna test in this video and see how much that power really comes into play. But we'll find out real world stuff. When things get real, when I start drawing dumb pictures, that's when we'll know that this is gonna be serious business. As someone with ADHD, all of these numbers and math usually make my brain feel like it's glitching out and I just zone out and can't I can't. Magic Mind sent me these magical little green potions that are supposed to help with focus and brain power, which is perfect for comparison videos like the one I'm doing today. Or just doing the things that my brain simply hates to do, like, I don't know, sending invoices that allow me to get paid for the work that I do. Seems like it shouldn't be a struggle, but boy howdy. I've actually been doing the Magic Mind Challenge, where I drink one of these every day for 7 days to see if it actually makes a difference. And I can't refuse a challenge, if I'm being honest. I tend to over-caffeinate to help deal with my focus, which is not ideal because it can lead to some jitteriness, a little bit of shaky hand. It's just not ideal when you're trying to draw pictures for a living. It's probably why I lean on the smoothing and the brush setting so much. I have noticed that Magic Mind helps give me that extra kick and extra little bit of focus without the jitteriness that comes with 5 cups of coffee. There is caffeine in here, but it comes from matcha tea. Is that how you say it? Hey, is it matcha? Matcha? In addition to matcha, these little magical potions are filled with nootropics and adaptogens. I don't know what that is. Sounds like some wizard nonsense, but all you need to know is you get a little extra focus kick without feeling like your hands are gonna shake off your desk because you had 14 cups of coffee. Or maybe that's just me. Here I am at day 7, and going over these stats did not take the typical 14 or so tries. If you need a focus boost, I recommend giving it a try. You can use my promo code, which I'll put here in between my fingers and a link below, to get you a discount to try your own 7-day challenge and see if it works for you. All right, thanks Magic Mind. Let's get back to these magic iPads. I just want to loosely touch on overall pricing before we get started. I think I'll come back to this in the conclusion after I've used them, because I think that at that point the pricing will make more sense. But I tried to find the most accurate pricing that I could for these. Obviously, this older iPad Pro is only going to be available used. Maybe some refurbished options are out there. This iPad Air is a little bit easier to find, still available new from some places, not from Apple because it's the last generation. iPad Mini, same. And then this is a new model. This is the current iPad Pro. So my iPad Pro maxed out with the nano texture comes in right around $95 million. It's not that much, but it's too much money. These things range from $1,300 to $2,300 plus. I think mine is more than that because in order to get the nano texture, you have to get like the terabyte plus hard drive. I'll talk about hard drives later on as well because there's different things to consider in regard to hard drive based on what apps you use and stuff like that and how they store files. The 5th gen iPad Air with the M1 chip can be found around $400. Sometimes you can find some lower options. Sometimes you can find some higher options. For comparison, that's quite a bit cheaper than the XP Pen Magic Drawing Pad, which I also did a video review of, which you can check out here. And I have to say, there's no comparison between the two. I would take this iPad Air over that thing any day of the week. Not that that's a bad device, but this is far superior. Now this Mini, obviously it's limited, but maybe you have your tiny little person with tiny little hands, but maybe you don't mind the size. I think the iPads make the smaller size work a lot better than you would think because it's so intuitive to zoom in and out and move things around, much more so than like a smaller drawing tablet. I was thinking recently when using a 16-inch display tablet, considerably bigger than my 13-inch iPad Pro, but feels much smaller because of that interaction with it, the gestures, the moving around, because it's tied to just the desktop apps. I feel like I would need a much larger display tablet, like a much larger Cintiq to feel equivalent to a 13-inch iPad. Like for example, I have a 24-inch Cintiq, really doesn't feel like there's more usable space than my iPad based on just how much easier it is for me to move my canvas around and zoom and all that stuff. And then that brings me to this iPad Pro oldie, the A1980, I believe. I think maybe third gen iPad, but maybe the first of the 11-inch. It's a little confusing. iPad Pro 2018. These seem to be around $350 to the $450 range. But again, there's a lot of variations. I'll get into this later, but there's also things like When you're buying new or refurbished from Apple, there's education discount, which is a thing if you are a student or a teacher. Best Buy often has big sales. They have open box items, which are usually nearly new, but they have, you know, maybe the package is damaged or something like that. And then there's the Amazon refurbished store, which is that as well. All right, so we got to pick one of these to start drawing with. I don't want to start with my iPad Pro because that's the one I use all the time, so I'm very much used to it. I feel like I need to use something else and then come back to that. I don't want to jump to the smallest one or the oldest one, so I think the sweet spot is starting with this last generation iPad Air. And if I'm being honest, I think this might end up being the sweet spot for iPads, but we'll find out. Let's make something. Okay, so I'm sitting here at the previous generation iPad Air. It's the 5th gen with the M1 chip, and right off the bat, I gotta mention that this does not have any sort of screen protector on it, and I do not like working on the bare glass. My partner Shanna is a maniac and just draws on the bare glass. No problem. Draws arguably better than me. But here we are. I brought out one of my gloves. I haven't used these in a while. This is the XP Pen one that came with my XP Pen tablet that I tested out. But these are all the same. People ask me about these all the time. I have some linked in my stuff I use and recommend link below. It's like my Amazon storefront that has stuff that I use that people ask about. They're pretty much all the same. I lose them, so I just get cheap ones. There's another one here that's pretty beat up. Regardless, I'm gonna try just drawing on this bare glass screen and try to not let that interfere with how I feel about it, because that's sort of a personal preference and something that can be fixed with any sort of matte screen protector, like a Paperlike or a Paper Feel or anything that's anti-glare. I do have a backup plan in case it's too bad for me. I have these Paperlike pencil tips that have a little bit of texture to them that may help me to handle the glass, but that's besides the point. Because this is the second most powerful iPad in the lineup, I thought maybe I would try to stretch its legs and do something with animation. So because this video is not about that process, I sketched it out ahead of time, and I did this on my M4 iPad. So I just opened it up here on this iPad, and let's just play my sketch to see if it plays it so far. Obviously this isn't gonna be the full illustration, but this is just roughs for me to like get the feeling of movement. All right, so let's play all. So it played immediately, there was no lag. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers with animation, and my document is not small. I believe, let's check. So this is 4,000 by 4,000 pixels, so that is definitely bigger than it needs to be for animation, but I like to work at that size to have brush control, and then I can make it smaller when I export it, but no lag playing it. So let's do a tightened up version of this. So I think to get started, I'm just gonna do a tighter drawing of this, do like the final artwork for this skeleton guy. I don't love the feeling of the pencil on the bare glass, but I'm gonna work with it for a little bit, and then we'll see if I can change back. One thing I will say right off the bat is that I'm so used to the nano texture not having any glare that like all I can focus on is just the gloss on this screen. It's just so shiny, so reflective. I'm seeing all the lights. The screen quality looks good though. Even at this angle, I'm used to drawing at like a more ergonomic angle, but looking down at this, there's no change. I know on a lot of less expensive tablets, the angle really affects the screen quality. Not the case here, but the screen looks super sharp. The blacks are nice and rich. I know that this is not a Pro OLED screen, but it's a great screen. I never felt like iPad screens were not great before the OLED display. I love the new OLED display, but they're all significantly better than other things that I've used. Because I'm doing the line work and I've already sketched it, I'm gonna pull my smoothing all the way up to get these smooth curves and just be more efficient. So if you're watching this and you're like, hey, why is there so much lag on that iPad? It's not, it's the smoothing. Here, let me do a demonstration. So in Fresco, the line smoothing happens, like you draw and it smooths it out. So it looks like a little bit of lag. It's the same on M4 iPad. If we turn the smoothing down and I draw, you'll see that there's nothing. There's no lag whatsoever. Deep, 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 deep. It's perfect. Because I've already sketched it out and got it to where I want it to be, I want to just get it nice and clean and ready to go quickly. So I turn the smoothing all the way up, and then I can just kind of and you know, there's a little bit of a lag, but it doesn't bother me because I already know, like I already did the drawing. So now I'm just like making the cleanest line possible. And this is faster because I don't have to like redraw things. Because the screen size is smaller, I'm being like mindful of like turning off stuff that I'm not using, like the animation at the moment. So drawing that long curve is a good example of why when I'm doing the tightened up line work, having the smoothing on is really beneficial, because it, you know, I probably would have to do that a few times to not get like a lumpy circle. I've talked in previous videos about how I hate the regular glossy bare glass, touching it and like doing gestures. It just feels sticky, like my fingers like grip on it too much. I don't know, it's a gross feeling to me. Could be the enhanced by my neuro spiciness, but I don't know. If you know, you know. It's a bit rough for me. I have to say though, I am not minding drawing on the glass as much as I thought. Like I don't love it, but it's nowhere near as bad as I was anticipating it being. It's fine. Like it's not great, but it's not terrible. Yeah, the biggest, like the gestures are much worse for me than the actual drawing process. It could be because I think this is an aftermarket pencil tip, like one of the softer ones. I have a video where I review Apple Pencil tips, and there's like some softer ones that are supposed to feel better, and this is one of them. I can't remember which one it is. I think it might be the Pen Tips Plus. So the drawings I'm gonna be doing in this test are part of my Stinktober prompt list for the month of October. This one is for the prompt Ghost. I've been posting them every day on Instagram, and there's so many people doing amazing drawings each day, and it's so rad to see them all. There's that hashtag MyStinkyTober24 because Stinktober was taken. This is my second year doing it, and it's so much fun to see all the people contributing. And there's a contest involved. If you want to know more about that, just go to my website linked below, and there's a little contest tab which will tell you how to enter. So the ability to just zoom in and out, which I've mentioned before, and just rotate the canvas really makes the iPad feel significantly less small than it is. Like this is a pretty small screen comparatively, but it's just so easy to just move around quickly and intuitively. I find that I can gesture and move faster on the nano texture because it's less grippy, but it's fine. I'm just a baby about the way it feels. So far, I'm having no issues. It feels totally fine. It feels the same performance-wise. No issues in that regard. But maybe when we start to animate, that will change. So far everything has been going perfectly fine, and no issues, no performance lag, screen feels fine. If this was my personal iPad, I would put, you know, a screen protector on it just because I don't like the feel of the regular glass. I also notice fingerprints on it because it's so glossy. They're way more noticeable than they are on the nano texture, and I feel like I get way less fingerprints on there, but that is something that would go away if I used a screen protector. Another thing that I was thinking about in regard to the other 11-inch iPad, I was thinking, why would anyone consider that one when this one seems fine? It's much newer, and it seems like it could be had for either the same or less money. And then I remembered, oh, the iPad Pros have that ProMotion 100 or whatever hertz. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, I don't really know what that means. Like I know the refresh rate, like there's less of a difference, but I'm not gonna lie to you and say that I can, like that it's an issue for me. Like I don't really notice it. Like my plan is after I do this, I'll open them up side by side on both iPads and like see if I can tell a difference, but I don't know. Some of you may think that I'm crazy because I can't tell, but I don't know, for what I'm doing, it's not that noticeable. Maybe it's more noticeable for other things, but it doesn't feel like there's any sort of delay or slowness. It feels nice and snappy. Got 2 layers of ghosts happening, no issue. Nice and snappy, no lag, no delay. Looking good. You know, I haven't used one of these textured pencil tips on the regular glass screen yet, so maybe this is a good opportunity to do that. So it's subtle, but it's nice. It feels a little bit better. It's got just a little bit more toothiness to it. Yeah, that's definitely an improvement. But as I mentioned, my issues come down to the gestures on the glass screen more so than the drawing. I don't like the drawing experience, but I hate the gestures. All right, based on how long I've been spending on this one drawing, I need to rethink the whole structure of this video. I'm not gonna do a different drawing for each iPad because this video would be 3 days long, and that's not what the video is about. So now that I've gotten a good feel for this iPad Air, I think what I'll do now is I'm gonna work on it on the 11-inch iPad Pro from 2018. Actually, I think it makes more sense to work on the same thing on the same iPads. Then it's the same experience. That's a much better idea. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna close this out, open it on the iPad. I'll be back. I gotta go. All right, I switched over to the 11-inch iPad Pro from 2018, the A1980. I had a magnetic screen protector on there that would have made the drawing experience better. But to be honest, I really want to know if I can tell a difference between the Pro Motion display and the non-Pro Motion display, because I feel like I should, and it's a little embarrassing if I can't, so I figured if I take that off, it'll be more of a one-to-one relationship. And then I also am using the same pencil that I switched over to the paper-like textured pencil tip, just to keep it all even. So I'm gonna make some progress on here, and then I'm gonna switch over to the iPad mini, and then we'll go back to the Big Dog M4. All right, so there's still no lag issues, and we've got some texture happening on 3 of these ghosts. Let's keep pushing it. So I want this one to go behind that hand. So what I'm gonna do is come to my hand layer, and I'm going to select invert selection. I want it to go between the hands, so I'm just gonna erase it from the front. Maybe on this one, I will just clip some purple texture from the background to the ghost, just as a way to like show different ways to play with texture here, and do it a bunch of different ways to sort of test the iPad's ability to deal with it. I mentioned this before, but this lag in my brushes is not the iPad. It's me using a machine that I don't use, so the brushes aren't loaded. So far, the drawing experience feels the same. Maybe I can tell that the screen has the ProRes refresh rate. Like, it does seem pretty great. I don't know, that one seemed great too. How am I supposed to know if I'm just trying to believe or trying to be like, yeah, oh yeah, I see it, I totally see it. You don't see it? Can't believe you can't tell. Can't believe you can't tell about the Pro Motion. I thought you were a pro. Are you even a pro, bro? Bro, are you even a pro, bro? You say you're a pro illustrator, but are you even a pro, bro? All right, now we just gotta make sure that the same frames match, like the clipping mask ones, so that they stay. Cool, we got that texture in there. I mean, it's just immediate, but it's also pretty impressive to me that this iPad is 6 years old, and it's just no issues whatsoever doing this frame by frame animation with textures, clipping masks, all these different layers of motion, handling it as if I'm doing nothing. Like, it's no big deal at all. It's like, this is just what would I do? Like, you imagine doing anything on like a 6-year-old computer, like you can tell it's 6 years old. This could be a brand new iPad. You know, just because I'm testing things and getting loose, I'm gonna like do another layer with some texture here to just, I don't know, like maybe make some texture path following the ghost, like a little glitter path. There we go. Cool. Okay. All right, I feel like I'm at a good place to stop with this 11-inch old iPad Pro. It's been a beast. I'm really like pushing it, and so many different layers of texture and motion, and this is a very high resolution file. It's big enough to be printed like over probably like 12 inches by 12 inches at full 300 DPI. Even though it's animated, you can't print animation, but I'm just trying to test its abilities. And in Fresco, it is cranking along. There was at one point when I did a bunch of texture fills for the body of the skeleton that are like rotating, that when I hit play, it like took a second to like, I don't know, cache it or whatever, and then it just started playing, and it hasn't hesitated since, which is mind-blowing, because if you've ever edited something in Adobe Premiere, let's say on a M3 Max MacBook Pro loaded to the gills that could handle computing, is that the word? Is it computing scientific data, all kinds of crazy stuff. You hit play and then it's like having a hard time keeping up. This iPad that is twice as old as my child is having no issues with this animation. I'm gonna switch over to the little baby iPad Pro and see if it can even open this file. And if it can we, I don't know, add some texture moving into the background? Maybe we're gonna put some faces on these ghosts. Maybe I'll save that for the homecoming to my M4 iPad Pro. But so far, these two 11-inch iPads have been great, and the size is fine. If like this is what an iPad was, like if this is the full-size iPad, I would still be happy using this. So I was mentioning how while using the M1 iPad Air, it felt like it was really great, and the size was the same as the old 11-inch iPad Pro, but it was way newer. So I was thinking, why would anyone want the previous generation iPad Pro? And I remembered that the iPad Pros have that ProMotion display, I think is like a faster refresh rate. Now I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. The whole time I was drawing this on the non-ProMotion display, I wasn't thinking, hey, this feels different. I didn't even really notice. I feel like the difference between the gloss and like the texture is more noticeable to me, but it's nice and snappy. There's no like, doesn't feel like there's any delay. Now I've watched lots of iPad review videos because I'm kind of a nerd about it, and I'll see videos where people are like, yeah, the no ProMotion, and I got this wiggle and the jiggle and blah, blah, blah. I mean, maybe, but so I got these things side by side here. First thing I noticed is that I have a screen protector on the 11-inch Pro, so it feels nicer. But in terms of like quality, I think they're the same in terms of quality. I think it's just the refresh rate. But I think for drawing, it's not gonna be as it's not gonna be a thing. Like maybe if you're playing some crazy games where they're like moving real fast, but then again, you're gonna be limited by the processor on this older one. In terms of like both of these handling these layers of animation, I hit play, they both seamlessly play. They look great on both. I don't see any weird motion things, any weird lag stuff. I do notice that the old iPad Pro is thinner than the Air. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit. I think maybe like the bezel, is that what it's called? That like black border is tiny bit smaller on the 11-inch iPad Pro, because I think technically the Air is a 10.9, so it's definitely not something worth thinking about. So I don't know. I think I don't notice anything in terms of the ProMotion thing, and maybe I'm stupid or crazy or missing something here. There are some distractions. I do have this magnetic screen protector on here, which is clearly hindering the image a little bit, so maybe in that regard. But this M1 iPad Air is snappy. There's no question about that. Nothing, it doesn't feel laggy at all. I'm doing this animation on a very large, high resolution file, which is pointless for an animation. I'm just doing it for the drawing experience. But it's great so far. I think after I finish this drawing on the M1 Air, I'll do something immediately on the old iPad Pro and see if I can tell from a prolonged like use case, like, okay, now let's switch and do something on the ProRes display and see how it feels. So far, this M1 iPad Air feels great. I think I'm gonna push its limits a little bit and do some like texture within the animation to see if I can maybe make it slow down a little bit, but I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what happens. All right, let's switch over to little baby iPad. Little teeny tiny baby iPad. Look at this little baby, teeny tiny little baby iPad. Look. Oop. Peekaboo. Peekaboo. Here's my file. No lag. It's playing it. Texture's looking good. Look at that. This is obviously a special use case. It's an iPad mini. You know, it probably wouldn't be the best iPad for drawing all the time, but it is certainly very portable and can handle just this pretty complicated file. No hesitation whatsoever. Totally fine. Let's see if we can actually do some drawing with this level of stuff in here. I'm thinking maybe like a textured background that we can put on like a motion path or something like that to just have it move a little bit. But that's the plan. I think drawing on this, you just need to think of it like a little sketchbook, but maybe if you're a little tiny person,
this could be a viable option.
Especially for how affordable they can be. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and make a new layer for the background. You know, already noticing that to get this full image in here without it being obscured by like the timeline and stuff below, it's getting small. But again, it's so quick and easy to zoom in and move around. It's not terrible. So my plan is to just put like just a texture in the background. Maybe I'll just do it with black. So let's go to texture brush, get this color distress max one, make it nice and big, and just kind of pull it in there like that. So this one does have a screen protector. I was not gonna take it off because it's not magnetic, and I want it on there. It is quite a bit nicer, I gotta say. You can probably hear the ASMR-ness of the pencil on the paper texture. Just getting these big texture brushes loaded. So these are kind of quite a bit of contrast, but okay, so let's just play it first. Let's get a little wild. Bring the layer opacity down. I think it looks fine as is, but just for the process of trying to overwhelm this tiny little baby iPad, let's put it on a path. We could just use one of these presets maybe. We could do this like breathe one. The texture makes it sort of hard to tell what's even happening because it's like zooming in and out. Maybe there's one where it'll be more clear. Oh, the flicker is kind of cool. Okay, so now I just think we want to put some faces on here, so I figured I'll do some of them, and then maybe we'll switch back to my iPad, and then I'll give my final thoughts on this whole ordeal. Okay, iPad mini thoughts as I've been going through this. I've done the faces for 8 of these layers, and so far so good, no issues. Sure, it's small. You know, I knew that. I draw on this thing somewhat regularly, but performance-wise, it seems to be handling all of it no problem. It is nice having a texture again. I've been drawing on the bare glass for the other ones, but yeah, it's small. Your hand takes up a good portion of it. But when I'm like zoomed in and drawing, it doesn't feel bad. The only thing that I do notice is that, you know, I feel like I'm having to zoom a lot and move my artboard around. So like seeing the whole composition, I have to be like mindful because I have to zoom way out to get the whole thing. But at this stage in the drawing, it's not as big of a issue. If I was still like in the planning stages, it might be a little bit more troublesome. But then again, it also could have the added benefit of like forcing you to see the composition smaller, and I think that's really good, especially when you're starting out, to get a feel for the overall composition. Whereas if you're working on something like a surface that's really big, like the 13-inch iPad Pro, you're less likely to get that like over bird's eye view, just the whole thing, looking at the elements and the composition and just like the overall structure of your illustration. It forces you to like think about things in terms of like thumbnail, like how does this look? You know what I'm talking about, right? At this point, I should just switch back to my big boy iPad Pro and wrap this up, and then I can give you my final thoughts. I don't need to draw too much on my iPad because I use it every day. So it's not going to be that new of an experience. All right, I am back on my prized M4 iPad Pro 13-inch with the nano texture in full comfort mode using the Sketchboard Pro 2. And because there's going to be questions in the comments, I'll put a link below to where you can find one of these. This is my favorite accessory for the iPad. It just makes drawing on it so much better. Makes it feel even bigger than it actually is. And man, after using all those iPads, which I think, as I mentioned, have great displays, this display is great. I know some people say that the nano texture makes it not as good as the regular one. I think they both have their strengths. Although the one without the nano texture has a little bit richer blacks, there's no reflection on this. Working on some bare glass screens today, you just like see everything in the room reflected. But coming straight from the Mini, this feels enormous. The jump from this to the 11 didn't feel awful, it was manageable, but like this feels, I feel like a pro right now, I gotta say. So I'm just gonna come in here, draw the rest of these faces, finish up this animation, and then I'll give you my thoughts. All right, I think this is all done. I'm just gonna turn everything back on. Got skeleton, got the background texture, got the faces. I think I'm just gonna turn down the opacity on the faces and set them to multiply. And turn off the onion skin, and let's hit play. I think it's fun. I definitely pushed textures quite a bit here to test the different iPads, and they all held up and did it fine. I think the final result is pretty neato, if I do say so myself. As you can imagine, the experience drawing on the new M4 iPad Pro is delightful, perfect, great. I forgot how much I liked the nano texture, and when I say I forgot, I just hadn't drawn on it yet today. I draw on it every single day, but I drew on 2 bare glass iPads, and then one with a paper feel screen protector, and then back to the nano texture, and it just reconfirmed my love for the nano texture. I love the way it feels to zoom in and out on it. That's the pro motion right there. Love the way the pencil sounds on it. It's just so smooth and just perfect. It's delightful. I think there's only one last thing to do, and that's just talk about all of this and give my final recommendations for what I would say is the best affordable option for an iPad. All right, first let me briefly talk about the different pencils. There is the Apple Pencil Pro, which only works with the new iPad Pro. That's the one I have with my iPad Pro, and it draws exactly like the regular Apple Pencil 2. Is that what it's called? Yeah, there's 3. There's the Pro, the 2nd gen, and the USB-C. The 2nd gen doesn't have a couple features that the Pro has. The Pro has this squeeze feature and like this haptic feel where you can like feel if you're like dragging something and it like snaps to a point or something like that, and you can like squeeze to access a menu. And it also has this like barrel roll feature. To be honest, it's not really something that plays a big part in my work and not something that I really notice that much. I think the squeeze menu is a great feature when I remember to use it. I just have so much muscle memory built up from drawing without that I just like go to the menu as opposed to just squeezing to access it. But other than that, they feel the same, they're the same weight, they look exactly the same. I have to sometimes check to make sure that I'm using the Pro in case I have like 2 iPads on my desk. The last one is the USB-C. Don't recommend this one because it does not have the pressure sensitivity. And that's kind of a deal breaker when you're using your iPad for illustration, unless you're that rare situation whose work only involves like mono weight lines. And there are some people who work like that, but that's a very specific thing. So that's my thoughts on the pencils. So I think the first thing to address among these 4 iPads is the iPad Air 11-inch and the older generation iPad Pro. Performance-wise, they're very similar. Technically, the M1 iPad Air is better in all regards aside from the screen. That iPad Pro does have that ProMotion display, but as you saw in the video, I could maybe tell. I don't know. Maybe you know better than me. If this is something that you're concerned about, what you could do is just go to an Apple store and play around with the Pro, which has the ProMotion, and then play with the Air, which doesn't have the ProMotion, and see if that refresh rate is something that is important to you in your workflow. Because if it's not, absolutely the iPad Air 5th gen with the M1 chip or the current generation is going to be a better bet than the older iPad Pro, because that older iPad Pro is 6 years old at this point. Who knows how long Apple will continue supporting it. Currently, I think the oldest iPads that they're supporting are like 6 years old. I would say though, generally the Pro model would be supported for longer than just like a base model. And especially anything with like an M chip, which is Apple's own chips, those things are so powerful that it's gonna be hard for them to just stop supporting them very soon, because they're very, very capable, more capable than the iPad OS can even provide for it. So I would say the only reason that you may consider 2018 iPad Pro 11-inch over a more current Air would be if you found like a really great deal on it. And by really great deal, I mean like have to be under $400, probably under $350, because you start to get into the area where you can get a refurbished 5th gen iPad Air with the M1 for that price. So really good deal. And that ProMotion is just something that you can really detect, because in terms of screen quality, they feel the same. I can't tell a difference. I think the resolution is on par on both of them. But then what about the Mini? The Mini is great. The screen, not as good as the other models because it's smaller, it has less resolution, but it works fine, it handles everything. It's just a teeny tiny little thing, and maybe that's good for you. I think it's pretty great. I just wouldn't want it as like my everyday drawing machine, but I love taking it with me as like a little sketchbook. So some considerations. I brought this up before, but Apple support currently goes back 6 to 7 generations. And again, that should be longer with the Pro models and the especially M chip models. Another thing to consider is hard drive space. Something to consider in regard to that is what you mainly do your work in. If you're someone who uses Adobe Fresco mainly like myself, it really depends on the Creative Cloud for its files and doesn't store as much of it locally on your machine, so you don't end up using that much hard drive space. So for me, I could have a smaller hard drive iPad and it wouldn't matter because I'm utilizing the cloud for most of that stuff. And then if I'm doing professional work in Fresco, when I'm done with it or sending it to the client, I'm transferring it to my computer anyway, so I can take it off the iPad. But if you're someone who works mainly in Procreate, that's gonna be stored locally on your machine. So if you have a smaller hard drive, you're gonna have to be diligent about backing that up so you don't fill it up. So what about other iPads? I know I tested the ones that are available to me in my home, but there are other iPads out there. There is the regular iPad. I suggest don't get the regular iPad because it only allows for Apple Pencil that doesn't have pressure sensitivity. And you don't want that. I'm sure performance-wise it would be fine, but again, no pressure sensitivity, and we're talking about this in regards to illustration. I mentioned earlier that the 5th gen iPad Air that I was using in this video can usually be found pretty easily for around $400. Something to consider is that a new iPad Air with the M2 chip is $600 to $1,100 new. So obviously that's a big jump. However, you can usually find some good deals, like Best Buy often has open box deals where it's still a new product, but maybe the box had been opened and, so they can't sell it as like a new thing. Currently, there's one available for $510. So when you're looking at $400 versus $100 more for a brand new M2, it's something to consider. That said, does the performance matter jumping from M1 to M2 for illustration? I would say no. You saw in this video, I had 0 issues at all with that M1 iPad Air, and my partner Shayna uses it for illustration all the time, and it's great. I would say anything that has an Apple M chip is gonna be more than adequate. Something else to consider is that the newest iPad Air also is available in a 13-inch like the iPad Pro. So if you want that extra size, that is a viable option. Those start at $800, but again, currently Best Buy has an open box one for $686. $686 for an M2 iPad Air 13-inch, pretty great. So there's another option that I would consider. I discovered on Amazon's refurbished thing, they have like a whole refurbished section where they sell refurbished items. There's a lot of iPads on there, and there's a lot of M1 iPad Pros. Now this was the iPad that I recently upgraded from to the new M4 iPad Pro, and I've mentioned numerous times that I never had any performance issues with that iPad. I'm just sort of a nerd and wanted to upgrade. I was really curious about the nano texture, but I could have continued working on that for who knows. It's a beast. It was totally fine. Great. Those are available around $500. So $500 for an M1 iPad Pro is solid, because then you get the ProMotion, you get the big display, pretty great. And then there's M2 iPad Pros, and those are up to $750. It's quite a big jump, but there are some features about the M2 that make it, an added goodness, which are like the hover features. And this is like, you can see the brush on the screen before you touch. And I really like it in terms of the layers. When you hover over layers, it'll show you a preview of the layer. Even when you have a layer with animation, when you hover over that, it plays the animation and a little thumbnail. I think that's pretty cool. So it's a big jump. You don't need the extra performance, I would say, for illustration or simple animation, but that is a nice feature to have. The other thing to keep in mind is if you are a student or you teach, definitely take advantage of that education discount that Apple provides. They have a full education store on the website. You just search education store for Apple, and then things are usually $50 to $100 off, even more on larger ticket items. And they have a whole refurbish section as well to consider. And Apple refurbs may as well be brand new because they look impeccable. And then also Best Buy, B&H, they have sales all the time, and you can usually get a good deal from them if you just wait it out a little bit. So in conclusion, my M4 iPad Pro with the nano texture is overkill for me for a number of reasons. I don't need the hard drive space that I was required to get the nano texture. I don't need the M4 chip for the kind of work that I do. Clearly, my files worked great on an iPad Pro from 2018, an iPad Mini, all of that stuff. Some of these machines are slower than my iPhone, and they handle it just fine. But I love my M4 iPad Pro with the nanos. It's my favorite, best drawing experience ever, but I don't recommend it for most people just because the price is so prohibitive. If in the future they put the nano texture on less expensive devices or remove the requirement to have a terabyte and above storage, then jump on it. But it's pricey, so hopefully this helped. If you want to know more about the iPad Mini, I have a full video on that. I even experiment carrying around a satchel to keep it with me. It's an old embarrassing video. If you want to check it out, I'm gonna link that right here for you. I think you might enjoy it. I think I dance in that video too. So this has been a good talk. I hope this is helpful. Let me know below what you think if you're in the market for one of these things, and if this answers any of those questions. If you have more questions, put them below and I will try to answer them. Okay, bye, thanks, see you soon.